Hello, my next guest, Mary White, is a creative force, a sculptor and educator who supports and encourages the important role of women artists in environmental art and education. She's looking for new leadership. I'm going to leave her whole website here in the show notes because it is truly inspirational. Mary is a daughter of a water resources geographer, and in her early travels, it really seeded a passion for the creative process, for nature, and caring for Earth's resources. As a scholar, she won the Fulbright and went to Ireland. She produced a symposium with her cohorts focusing on craft as a vehicle for social justice. As a teacher, she taught at Corning Museum of Glass, California School of the Arts. She spent over 20 years teaching at San Jose State University. She also helped start the glass program at the Crucible and in the Bay Area. She currently is co-chair of WEAD, which stands for Women Eco Artists Dialog. I am so intrigued with Mary as an artist. She creates art that brings together natural sciences, environmental perception, arts education, and peacemaking, all through relationships and friendships forged. She seems to know everyone, and now I'm so pleased to introduce you to this amazing ecofeminist. Tune into the conversation where we catch up with Mary during her short stay in Colorado with her family, but is also the location of where she has a very large public art installation. It's 18 feet high. It's titled Flood Marker. So she's going to walk us through this piece and she's going to talk to us about many others throughout her career. Hi, Mary. Sister, I am so
Hello.
glad you're here.
Hello, hello.
I guess I should tell everybody today you're joining us from Colorado. So thanks for taking time out of your family visit and something that I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more as you talk about your work. But Colorado is a city that has one of your major public art pieces, right?
hmm
Awesome. And so gonna have you say hello, and then I can share my screen and we can talk about Flood Marker. Can we start there because it's huge? It's 18 feet high.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm here. Welcome to everybody. And thank you, Jody, for including me in this series. I'm sitting in a out on the Front Range in Louisville, Colorado, which is right looking at the mountains where I grew up partially, and very close to Boulder, Colorado, where my flood level marker is situated in downtown Boulder.
Wow. Yeah. So we were talking, everybody, we were talking before, and there's Christmas ornaments on the windowsill from her brother and just things going around. So I find that
Well,
often,
we're out here looking at the archives of and the big storage locker that my mother and father had, and finally packing it up and closing it up. So it's the end of an era.
end
So
of an
the
era.
flood marker was built in 2010, 2011, but it started in 2006 when I moved to Colorado, and I started talking to my father, who was 94 at the time, about visual aids, visual forms to describe problems with floods. And if you look at this picture, this is 2011, right after the opening of the flood marker. And it shows the 50, 100, 500. And the second from the top marker is the level of the water in the mid 80s when there was a flood on another similar canyon about 30 miles away. So this was set up as a way to help people visualize how high the water would be. And if you look at the building in the back, which is just below the marker for the flood in the 80s, that is the city building for many of the city functions. So it will be a disaster if there is a flood in Boulder. And people have continued to build in the floodplain for years and years and years. So this marker is a gesture to help educate people to understand that if you do a build in floodplains, you're likely to have serious consequences that include loss of people's lives, and that it might be better to not build on floodplains.
I mean, that sounds like a genius idea. It's amazing. It's just amazing what we think is okay.
Well, it's a long history in the world of natural resources to look at where people built. And usually they built in the floodplains as a last resort when there wasn't any room anyplace else.
Ah, the
So
sprawl.
I can tell you this project was a group project that I started because of my background. My father was a floodplain water resources geographer, and he lived in Boulder, Colorado, and we moved there in the 50s. And he used to talk with the city and tell them and explain to them that they would have consequences of flood damage if they built on floodplains. And at that time in the 50s, the Boulder Creek was concretized, which has happened all over the United States, started in the 20s and the 30s when there was expansion. And so the Boulder Creek was opened up in the 50s. And then they began to buy back some of the buildings that were along the creek. So Boulder is one of the cities that's considered this more than many, many cities in the country. And after my father died, I was actually there. I actually quit my job at San Jose State running the glass program and moved there because my father had a lot of books and correspondence. And so I'd help him write letters. And I wrote a lot of letters for him that he dictated to the city of Boulder, responding to the latest inquiry about building a shopping mall on Boulder Creek in the floodplain. And so I was taking a little geography, a little architecture class at the university while I was there. And I built a model for a floodplain marker. And after I showed it to my dad, and he thought, well, that's not a bad idea, that to have some kind of visual reminder. And after he died, some of the citizens came to me and asked me to help pursue that project. So we had 16 players, engineers, floodplain managers, artists, and friends of Gilbert's, and we all worked on the project from 2006 up to 2011. And then it was given to the city of Boulder in 2011. And it included signage about flood safety and education about floods. It's right in the middle of downtown Boulder, so it's perfect location along a bicycle path.
Bicycle path, so people can see it. It
Right.
does help bring a sense of place to those that get to view it.
Yeah. So it was really fun for me because I was raised by scientists in natural resources. And so I was able to bring my art making back, excuse me, to that area of working with people that had been students of my father, who were now floodplain managers, and engineers who worked on water resources all over the world with my father. It was a very healing way to deal with him leaving physically this earth.
Right.
So it cost, the budget for it was 120,000. So we made the flood marker in Oakland. We raised the money. a lot of it was from individuals in Boulder County. And then some of it was, for instance, we got $10,000 from the Arts Association in Boulder. But other was from the Floodplain Managers Association in the United States.
Is that
And
right? Yeah.
other geographical organizations and his colleagues. So it was fun. I was helpful with raising some of the money. And then we built it at Dorothy Lanahan's studio in Oakland, California. And we shipped all the glass pieces out to Colorado. There was a big fire at the time, so there was a holdup there. And then I was on a Fulbright in Ireland at the time. So we ended up constructing it right after I got back. No, right before I left, And then now it's gone through a couple of floods. There was a big flood in 13, and it's still going, and it's still there. So I think every city that has flood issues might be good to consider some kind of visual art record of how the water flows, because my father had said in his thesis in the 1940s that floods are acts of God, but flood damages are acts of man. So if you build on a floodplain, chances are you're going to have some damage.
I like what he said. I like what he said. And I think it's also important to really bring in the geographic location again, because we're talking about Colorado, we're talking about Boulder. So we're not talking about a seascape. We're not talking where the ocean meets the land. We're talking about the flooding coming from the huge mountains, right? And the snow melts
Right.
and coming through.
Well, have you ever heard of the floodplain alley in Austin, Texas?
I have not.
So there are a lot of very well-known flash flood incidents in Austin, Texas, all over the country. Tulsa, Oklahoma has had a big flooding problem. My dad helped consulting with that, and they managed to do some very pioneering work, buying back land and creating open space in the floodplains.
Oh,
Lay
okay.
River, as if you look at that example, that's a way to learn a lot about flooding. The LA River had problems with flooding, and they've tried mitigating it in many ways. There are a couple of artists, Lauren Bond, who's working on the LA River. It's fascinating.
I'd like to meet her. Yeah, it's such a collaborative process. Artists that are working with identifying some of our issues where man has been involved, and it's that collaboration between your creative spirit and the land and some of the data that's coming in of why humans should intervene in that area or not.
Well, it was interesting. Mary Miss came and did an art project about the flooding while we were building our floodplain marker. And I thought it was really good example of two ways to approach public art making. Ours was extremely methodical. We went to all the city meetings, and Christian Mueller, who was an artist in Boulder who did a lot of stonework, was working, I think, in like 2009 when I was 2008, actually, right after we'd gotten started. And I asked him to be the co-artist on the project because he lived in Boulder and he'd been doing a lot of big stone projects. And he was like, okay, we're gonna. But it meant we went to Parks and Rec meetings. We went to the citizens meetings. We gave PowerPoints. We went to city council. And the process took many, many years. Mary Miss had this brilliant idea of painting paint caps, the tops of paint cans in blue. And then she went around town and wired them to trees and buildings at the level that the water would come if there was a 100-year flood. And it was a great project because it was fast, it was guerrilla.
Yes,
People didn't want them on their buildings if they were businesses.
the
And
truth hurts.
and Naropa wanted the school wanted to take them down. But because there was one of the paint cans was on halfway up the front door of Naropa of the main building. And it was a wonderful project. And then there was a homeless person who started guarding the, the paint cups so that nobody would take them
Took,
down.
took ownership. I love it.
Ownership and event. So I think it takes all kinds of art making to do
Yeah,
this.
it
And
does.
also my original design was quite different. It was much more irregular and kind of lyrical, but the city officials didn't like it, and they wanted something very straight and symmetrical. And I think that's okay because to me, collaboration and working with people who are different than you is part of art, what I think art making is all about for me,
hmm
public art making.
hmm Yeah, what you're talking about with all of those meetings, it is very different than guerrilla. It's not that just you have an idea and then you raise the money. There's so much more involved. I've led a few public art processes through my neighborhood in Seattle, and it is so years in the making. Like you said, yours took over 5 years. But what I found really interesting too is that even if I had a proposal and I went to the meetings, I then had to translate the meeting into 6 different languages. And during the time, it grew from 6 languages to I think I had to do 12.
Right.
So
Well,
everybody felt included and was a survey of where you were.
well, I actually have a little article that I wrote for Women's Eco Artists Dialog, which is the group that I help chair right now. It's an online group and a directory of women working on ecological and social justice issues. And when I wrote it, it was fun to be able to name at least 16, maybe 18 people who were very involved with this project in one way or another, and all had different strengths. And so part of what my role was to help them was to identify what their strengths were and then to have them shine doing what they could do best as part of it. The
You are
engineering was a challenge, and Christian uh, had a friend who was an engineer on Boulder Creek who loved to river raft, and he knew about water. And so he did the engineering for a very low cost. We had a lighting firm work on estimates. The lighting was probably the hardest part, and we've ended up without it being lit. We had a lighting component that didn't work very well. But
well,
structurally, it works. It's been fantastic. It has survived. And I guess there's another part about art making, which is how do you have, um, what do you make something permanent? Do you make something temporary? Do you make something that the community really wants and owns, or do you make something that you feel is important for the community? I would say Richard Serra made his walls and
mhm.
his fences, and that they were, or Christo, those that's a different attitude than I would take in public art making. I'd spend a lot more time just going around and finding out what it is that people are interested in and wanting. And so in a way, other artists could say that's compromising style because this is a very simple obelisk. It's not a new idea to make an obelisk. It's not a innovative idea to make an obelisk. There are many, many obelisks all over the world that got taken from various parts of Asia to Italy, but it's something that fit with the project. And so interesting in public art. There's so many approaches to take.
Yeah, absolutely. In so many ways to navigate to get it done. Because I'm sure, I don't know, do you feel like when you start a project that you need to see it done in one iteration or another? Like just because
Well,
that
I had
creativity
models.
boiling?
Yeah, I had models that of what I thought, which was really quite different than this final model. By the way, the man
Right.
on the right in this picture is was a former student of my father's who worked for the EPA at the time in 2011 when we're showing this. So he'd come out as an official from the EPA to the ceremony of the opening of the flood marker.
That's so
Um,
great. But look at all this glass. So this is glass that you made in the Bay Area. And are these sheets of glass? Then like
right,
how'd you
they're
cut it? Like,
it's 1 inch glass that we from Germany. And usually I work with recycled glass, but Dorothy and I had lots of discussion. I had made many piles of window glass to use on this project starting 2006. And then Dorothy and I talked about it, and we decided that it would be better to use the 1 inch glass. So we actually have a little fast forward film about us making it, which is on my website.
oh, good.
And
I'll make sure to put that in the show notes.
yeah, and it's kind of fun. We cut the pieces, and then Dorothy Lanahan has done a lot of public art fabrication. And so she's very good at it. And we had a friend named Trudy, or her employee, Trudy, also worked with us, and she made the little video. But we cut the pieces, and so you had to stack, they're all different
Yeah.
sizes,
Right.
them. Which is a technique which fits with arrowheads in Colorado. So that was the kind of fun. It's a nice, soft, chipping technique. And then I drilled holes and everything, 2 inch holes. And then we made them and glued them together with silicone glue in stacks with the stainless steel centers. So,
Mm,
so we could ship them as stacks. And then we lift them up on a crane and lift them over a big 1 inch rod, threaded rod.
amazing. I mean, just the
So what
amount of
was
work.
fun is up Kristen and I did the a lot of the, actually putting it together, but the other two guys that came in, one was a floodplain manager, Clancy Philibom, and the other one was David Butler, who had edited the Hazards newsletter for years, and he's a writer. So they were up on the scaffolding with us, putting this thing together.
I love it. Yeah, you made something a little daunting really fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to do it.
Oh, I
Um,
just
I
love those
did
floodplain
I
markers.
did another project. If we talk about, I mean, to me, when I do more projects, I'm going to make sure they have some kind of environmental component, because I did a project after that in Mountain View called The Birthplace of the Silicon Valley. And
Yeah.
Shockley's lab was being torn down, and they needed to find some kind of way of recognition that that had been the lab. So I think historical research is a really good way to do it. So I went to the computer museum and I talked to a lot of people, and I found two engineers who'd worked with Shockley, and I invited them out to lunch. And then of course they ended up inviting me to lunch at one of those very simple um, places where all the deals are made
Oh,
down.
yeah. Ooh,
And we talked about chips, the beginning of the diode and the chip system in the 1950s. And that was really useful because the designs we ended up making had to do with their experiences and what they thought was the most important symbol to have. And one of them had been working for 15 years to somehow commemorate the lab. So it was already something that he wanted to do. The other artist on the project did the silicon molecule, and and I made the diode and the uh, one was an open diode, and then the other one was the chip that had the cover on it. So
So yeah, you got some
I don't know, but
projects
I
on your
think
mind.
that was also a commemorating place. We did a big timeline. I think signage, some people say in art that signage is not important. To me, um, signage is very, very good for the people who are not able to visually understand something. So on the projects that I've done, I always think that it's good to have historical knowledge, and possibly in this case for the flood marker, you have safety information about what you do if a flood does come.
Right, right. Well, just a little bit on signage. We're such a global world now, and people can visit other places from very far away. And it's a great way because art is a communication tool and it's a powerful communication tool. So if you can also add in some words to help really encapsulate the whole concept, I mean, why not?
Well, except not really on the piece,
On the piece. Okay.
not on the piece, somewhere else as, you know, like a placard. So we
Okay.
have the flood marker has a walkway where you can walk, when you're walking along the trail, you can stop. It's kind of a pull-off little area, and there are
Yeah.
3 signs as you look at the flood marker if you want to. So I guess I'm not really a component of signage on the marker itself.
Okay. I agree. Agreed. Yeah. Like those
Same with the
bronze.
one in Silicon Valley. The diodes are plugged into a circuit board on the sidewalk, like you know, a concrete circuit board. So you have to walk over to the timeline to understand exactly what they are. But
Got it.
I think it's useful. Like right now, I'm looking out here. You can't really see. There's some new housing. This is new housing built because the fire destroyed all the housing in this area, but there's
I
a
see.
creek beyond it.
Oh,
And
right.
there's a sign about the trolley that went in 1910 from Denver to Boulder. And my sister-in-law just found it yesterday. And that kind of gives a whole new rich view of where we are located now in
Oh,
this
that's
area.
so cool. Olivia found that. Is that Olivia?
Yeah, when she was out walking yesterday mornings. So
Oh,
I
that
think
is,
that it's kind of a funny thing. Like I know some curators at exhibitions don't want to have a lot of information in their in the cap when you in the little sign that goes
yeah.
the
In the
artwork.
didactics, but I, yeah, I've had to curate a few things that I'm like, the least amount of didactics, the better. But when in this context, it's public art. So it's seen in a different way. It's you're not going into a grand hall and paying X amount of dollars to go and see something. It's more the landscape.
And you're locating the history of that particular space, who was
Yeah.
there before.
Yeah.
So I mean, it'd be kind of interesting to know what a 30-year-old would think, or a 20-year-old, whether they read those signs, because it might be generational.
Well, I'm in a
Now, what
perfect
about
position to
yourself?
ask.
Would you read a sign?
Yeah, I
Would you?
would. I would.
Yeah.
I'm not 30 though. I would. Yeah. Even when I go to museums, I read the labels because I want to know who the artist is. But that's part of my career though, too. I'm like constantly trying to see if I can remember those stats and remember that painting and remember the year.
Well, I think it's so useful. I mean, because I think of myself almost more as an art teacher an arts than an artist. I mean, I love making things, and I couldn't live without it.
Yeah.
But I also spend a lot of time looking at how people learn, and how to communicate information. So, for instance, there are all these models that they say when you go to when you go through an education teaching program of, is the person auditory, kinesthetic, visual,
Mm-hmm.
or a combination of all of those? And how do you interpret information so that they will actually give it, understand it? So I often, when I was teaching, would give both a visual demonstration and a written instructions, because I wanted to reach both of those two sides, the engineers who wanted the detailed written instructions, and those who actually had to see it made or actually had to make it themselves as part of the learning process. So I think that's what's translated into any public art work that I do.
I
I
see.
also think the other part of public art is to engage the community and listen to them, and have them create some kind of ownership in the process of the making. So what I generally won't take on a public art project that means that it's just going to be put into a building that's already designed, or
Oh,
a space that's already kind of set. My favorite kind is
yeah.
if I get to meet the people at the very beginning of the project, and meet the architects, and meet all the players who have been thinking about doing a project there for 10 years or whatever,
Yes.
and then kind of gathering that information before making a proposal. So
Cheers to you. That's hard work. I
it
think
takes
in
a
that
lot of time and effort.
it takes a lot of time and effort and listening skills and being able to be flexible.
Right.
Like, especially if you already have an idea that you've already felt through your body going, that's genius. And then to stay nimble and humble and to help create that legacy for others in that community. Yeah, that's talent. That
Yeah.
is, that's a different energy source right there. And output. What am I talking about? I love how I'm talking to an ecofeminist and I have the sunshine right in my face and the leaves. I've got huge rose bush right out front.
Well,
And
let me talk about WEAD a little bit, because
let's
that's
do
been
it.
really fun. Women Eco Artists Dialog was started in 1995 by Susan Steinman, who is a public art person who had worked with Suzanne Lacey, and with Joe Hansen, who had been a community organizer and then went back for her master's and started the recycled at the dump in San Francisco, the waste residency, the artist residency at the waste facility in South San Francisco. And Akel Akamini, who is also a teacher artist who had worked with recycled material for a long time. So people would ask them where they could get information about women working on projects for shows and for events. And so they put together a directory, and they took it to the Women's Caucus for the Arts presentation in San Francisco. And they had 100 people on the list. And then it just kind of grew from there. Now there are over 600 names in the directory, and we're trying to finish up working on redoing the first website that started in 2013. So we've got a lot of glitches in it now, and we're working on it. So we do, Susan stepped down. She now does just the magazine. And
Okay.
I actually, one of the flood marker articles in one of the magazine issues, issue 4. And so Manoush Zomoradinia and I have been the co-chairs for the last 2 years. So what we've been working on is making this directory much more international and diverse, and finding ways to support our membership. It's a different world than it was in 1996. A
It
lot of people
is.
have their own websites. At that time, they didn't, even in 2013. Um, So we've had more programming, and we're looking for new ways to kind of highlight women working on projects and encouraging younger women who are interested to be mentored by older women in the field.
I just think it's a great resource. I can see the changes that you're making because when last year I was so inspired by WEAD, I had to join it. And it's there where I saw one of your quotes, and I'm gonna read it because I think it's perfect timing.
Okay.
So Mary believes passionately that combining art making and environmental study is a healing magical process and a potion that guides people to a new mutual understandings and helps them discover their own true spirit and community. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, it
Yeah.
is.
So
And
now, actually, since this podcast is going out, we're looking for a new staff member. We're hiring this month. And we hope to have somebody who will bring in more diversity to our collective. Everybody's volunteer except for the
that
staff
position.
member, and it'll be 10 to 20 hours a week. And we're also looking for somebody to help us finish up the website. The person we had finished couldn't finish it, so we have to do that. But our idea is, and Manoush is from Iran, so she's brought in a wonderful
Oh,
group of people that
yeah.
she knows everybody in San Francisco, as far as I can tell, in the art world. And she'll be stepping down. So we're looking for new, younger board members who want to take over from us. And having a nonprofit already set up, something we did in 2015, I helped with that, has been helpful because we just received a grant last year from the California Council for the Arts for $25,000, which is our biggest
Congratulations.
grant so far. But it means that we can pay for programming.
Yep.
We can pay artists to give presentations now,
Right.
and we can start some new programs. So if anybody listening has some ideas for new programming, approach us.
Definitely. I'll make sure your email is on there too. And I've sent a few artists your way too. It's such an important group, and it helps lifts the artists, and it helps bring a sense of community to those artists that are, in their studio working. And then they're like, wait, is anybody hearing me? It just it's a great way. It's a wonderful thing.
I
So
guess, okay. I guess one other part is that the whole world of who to be included in feminism is changing. And I think we need some new leaders to help work on that. It's not the same as it was, not male and female. They're all the non-gender and non-binary kinds of folks. And maybe it won't stay exactly the way it is, but we're looking forward to handing it over to some younger folks so that they can continue creating a communication
yeah,
place for
that the new generation.
I guess female identified artists who
Mhm.
want to help each other.
That's right. That's right. Wow, you've really been able to help so many artists. And I was just wondering a couple more things about you. Did you have did you have projects that you think helped you grow as an artist?
um oh yeah, I think that teaching at San Jose State is not really, I used I think I used a lot of my creative ability in
Mhm.
that time by bringing in visiting artists
Yeah.
as an organizer, really, but they help kind of inspire me. So I did a house series. I bought an old house in Berkeley and lifted it up. And the first years I was teaching at San Jose State, I was living in this bombed out shelter on top of pilings because the whole house had been lifted up, and then we had to pull out the whole interior. And so that started a whole new series of work about home and shelter. which the Glass Houses series, which, but the vulnerability of home, and then the whole issue of moving around and having to live in different places, which
Yeah.
now we experience that all over the world and see how difficult that is. And so that was one turning point, is when I started doing those pieces. And then I also, John Lewis, who's a glass artist quite well known
Oh,
in
yeah.
Oakland, had given me boxes and boxes and boxes of old crates of glass panels that were 9 by 12. And I started the reverse glass series. And when I was
Okay.
teaching, that was a really easy way. I could come home and make a panel. So when people say they don't have time to do art, I always think just find something little. So I worked on panels, and then I'd put them together to make big panels. And so while I was teaching, that was one of my main art forms. And I think that can be that you never need to stop. You just need to find a way to work on it that helps you stay constant in going into the studio and revisiting. And then another, well, the flood level marker, 2010.
Yeah.
And I did a Fulbright in Ireland in 2011 for 9 months. And we did a seminar of, well, I had 16 people. I had I think it was 16 students from both the master's program and the Arts Council in Ireland, who were already artists and craftspeople who wanted to come back. And so we did 2 exhibitions and 1 symposium as the kind of finale for that, but it was called The Landscape of Art and Design. But it was really a way for people to connect with their own communities. One student connected with the travelers, who are the migratory Irish. Another one connected with the deaf. Another one connected with the blinds community, and did these big clay forms of Bacon Evans, is it Bacon Evans? No.
No.
Of these distorted faces
Oh,
that were
Francis Bacon. Yeah.
Francis Bacon.
Right.
But they were in clay so that the blind people could feel them.
Wow.
Really fun, but they all had to find some community to respond to. So that was part of their work all year long. So that was another changing time. And I guess now being a chair is a whole nother
The chair of weed.
chair of,
Yes.
that's really a challenge. But it's
Yes.
really fun. I'm getting to know a lot of people that I never met before. It's very inspiring to see the members work and to meet new people that I want to invite to become members, who and there are some, I think it's really, there's so many organizations now. Part of its challenge is, what can we do that's useful? And how can we be supportive? So that's really what our main goal is right now, is to think about that.
Yeah. What's useful for us as a community that involves the earth, that involves our relationship.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Mary,
That
you were, I just,
involves looking at the land and the forces that are much bigger than us, the land and the sun and the water.
and the moon. Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. Mary, you're such an inspiration. I love your creativity. And I just want to thank you again for being with us today.
All right. Thank you very much for inviting me.